Well, I think we're live. I think. I'm already into my second coffee. Well, I will be in a second. I'm just about to start my second coffee. Aaron's saying he's bored already. I love it. I am not having the multi coffee today. I'm actually having a coffee that has lemon in it, which is really different than the multi coffee that I've just been having lately. So I'm going to open up my multi coffee, which you have to open up the coffee using this because it's a very special coffee. I've already had one coffee. So if I get out of control, you guys have to pull me back in line. This is pre-show too, by the way, guys. You're probably tuning in thinking this guy's a nutcase. It's because I've already had a coffee, and if you follow me, you'll know what I'm talking about. Hang on, I've got to pour this coffee because I can't show you what the real coffee is because YouTube will demonetize the videos. So I have to hide the coffee. Oh, I love it. I'm going to say hi to everyone. Hang on, let me pull over this screen. Let's see who's in. Now, we are in pre-show, guys. So if you don't want to watch this, switch off. Cheers anyway. Nectar of the gods, I should say. So let's have a look and see who's in here. So if you are joining in and you don't want to watch the pre-show, we've got about 5 minutes or so before we start the show live, guys. So I'm just going to basically go through who's here. Once the Oastler images sign comes up, the show will be starting, but I will put a timeline down below anyway. So if you're not interested in some of these stories, I'll give you a tip. You can skip the stories that you don't like later on if you're watching this and go to the story you like. So if you're one of the people that goes on here saying the show's too long, just skip to the parts you like. Or if you hate Sony, this is not the place for you. And I'm telling you that now. I am going to discuss some other things, but if you do hate Sony, you might want to switch off. So let me go anyway and see who's here. So who have we got? We've got Jamie's in here at the moment. Aaron's also here. Jamie's saying, Jay Anderson, loving your videos. Yeah, Aaron's got some great videos. I reshared the video we did the other day on my channel. I just want to try and get it moving. This week it will be on my channel though. Aldrich says hello to Aaron. Bruce says, g'day, I'll have a few coffees tonight while I watch the recording. Cheers. I've already had one and I'm on my second one. That was me just talking to everyone a bit earlier. Stuart's in here as well. Rui said, is it too early to hit the like button? No, I haven't got any down likes yet. It's give it time. Give it time. I'm surprised I didn't have one this early. It looks different because it looks like, I don't know. It's lighter if you look at the light coffee. Hang on. Ooh, I shouldn't show that. I'll get demonetized. Where are we? Jamie says it's no, it's not too early. Never too early. Rui said very funny. Carl said the gang's all here. Casper says, where's that trader, Manny? Are you talking about Manny's Fuji video? I haven't looked at it yet. Rui said, I just think that it is always too early to hit the dislike button. I love it. Stuart says, if anyone is bored and has a spare 80 minutes, check out the new camera video on my channel. And he has posted it on the photography, videography school there. Casper just saying hello. Yeah, Jamie, I have. Jamie is saying in here that, has anyone noticed all the sales on the A7III popping up lately? Yes, I have. That could be a sign that something's coming, or it might be a sign that they're a little bit worried about what the Canon release is going to do. So there's two ways of looking at this. It could be that they're going to release the A7S III fairly soon, or it might just be that they're trying to preempt the competition coming in with a fairly cheap full-frame camera, which I'm going to talk about in a minute anyway. Aaron's in here. G'day, Aaron. Jamie says, laugh out loud. It still amazes me people have that much spare time on their hands to go around and troll. I get the trollers all the time. You wouldn't believe it. Jamie says, already had a couple of coffees down. Beautiful. Aaron said he was born ready because I put a note on saying, is everyone ready? G'day, Gerald. Good to see you in here. G'day, Steve. Good to see you here too. Scott's is also here. He's had 6 whiskies and it's 2:30 a.m. in Glasgow. Scott, you're a legend. We've got to have a drink when I come back down there. I'm telling you, I've got to come up and see you. Johnson said, hello all. Al says, light through glass, can't function without coffee. Stacey is saying, greetings from a former coffee lover. Oh, former coffee lover. Joe said, I'm having coffee too. Oh, I love all these people having coffee. Al said, hello from rain-sodden Townsville. Yeah, you've had so much rain up there. Hope everyone's all right. Carl says the EOS RIP. Stuart says, hello, David. Scott says, the show's too short. I love Sony. Stuart says, thanks, Jamie Jones. Robin says, I'm here waiting on the good info. I've got quite a few interesting stories to share with you today, guys. So I'm really looking forward to sharing the stuff with you today. There's some really interesting stuff. I think we've got a really good show ahead of us, actually. C&D said, hello, everyone. Greg says, hello as well. NC Function said, I hate Canon. Should I switch off? No, not if you hate Canon. Although the Canon, I'm going to discuss the new Canon release as well. TC Production says, hello, David from South Australia. Jean says, hello, David. The live chat is now visible on YouTube, PlayStation 4. Oh, interesting. Watching on a 4K 50-inch TV. Gee, how big does my head look on that screen? There we go for time. Couple of minutes more. What the F? That looked like T. It does look like T, doesn't it? I know it's not. It's a coffee that starts with C and ends with A, and it's a coffee that comes from Mexico, and you put lemons in it. I love it. What else have we got? Giddy about the 135. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, actually, because it looks really interesting. Stuart said 2:26 a.m. here in the UK, and I'm still awake. Boy, Stuart, you guys are legends. Spice Media says, hello, everyone. Dave said, that's a real blonde roast coffee. Yeah, it certainly is. Rick retracted his message. God knows what that was. What else have we got? Ewan says, can you pronounce it? Guan-Yus. Greetings from Eindhoven, Holland. Is it Guan-Yus? Guan-Yus. Is that it? Probably not. Rick says, hey, Dave, it's raining in Brooklyn, New York. Beautiful day here today. Stuart says, hey. Stuart says, liked. I really would appreciate too, guys, if you can like it, because it does get people over. Philip says, good day from Florida. Finally upgraded to the A7III. That's fantastic, Philip. That is such a good camera. Sadly, I've been hit with the flu, so it's going to be a bit before I get to take it out. Oh, that's like the ultimate frustration when you get a new camera or a bit of new gear and you can't get out with it. I hate that. 42 Pro says, he's talking to someone else. Mike, g'day, Michael. I'm having real coffee. Is that a real coffee or is it the coffee I'm having, Michael? YouTube will black ban me one day. They'll be thinking this guy's a nutcase. Blue said, new A7III owner, congratulations, welcome to the club. Thanks in your part for the advice. I also picked up the Rockion 50 1.4 and the Tamron 28-75. Would you also pick up an 85? Yeah, just let me quit, actually. I might quit mail so it doesn't come up with messages. So what have you got there, Blue? You've got the 50 1.4, the Tamron 28-75. Well, I love the 85 and I use it all the time. So I'd say from my perspective, yes, I would. The 85 1.8 particularly is a great lens if you want to go down that line and not have to spend too much. It's probably one of the best lenses out there. It's stunning for its price. I've got the Batis, which is a bit more expensive, but the quality on both is very, very similar. If I was buying today, I would probably just buy the Sony 85 1.8. So yes, I still would. You've got the 28-75 Tamron, which I adore, but still occasionally you might want to go a bit faster than the 1.8 can give you. Than the 2.8 can give you. Melvin's saying hi from New York City. Samson says, hi, Dave. Where are we? I just lost it because it jumped down. Jeremy says, I have coffee too, watching you, Dave, from the Philippines. Woohoo, I'd love to go to the Philippines. Greg says, is this channel safe to watch if you don't drink coffee? Yes, it is. It's just that usually the Friday channel is a bit more silly because I've had a coffee and I have more coffee during the show. Barry's saying hi. Ali says, if the EOS RP has 4K, I'll fly to Australia and eat a kangaroo. Really? Aaron says, Michael, I'm drinking real coffee too. Yeah, Aaron doesn't drink, so he is drinking real coffee. Terry, g'day, Terry. David, do you know what happens when the angry photographer eats ice cream too fast? Absolutely nothing. Oh. Sorry about that cough. J. Rowe says, get the Sony 85. It's great value. And I agree with that, J. Rowe. It's fantastic value, that Sony 85. Craze says, Matt, still touring Vietnam on my bicycle with my A7III, lugging the Sony 70-200 2.8. Wow. That's a big lens to be lugging around on a bike, that's for sure. That's where sometimes the 28-75 is so good for travel because it's so light, but then you do miss that long end. And I do love shooting landscapes and things with the 200mm. It really is good to shoot on the long end. Michael saying, bam. Steve saying, EOS R minus 1604K. G'day, Fatamir. Good to see you in here. Hero says, greetings, Lord Oastler. Hoping for that Sigma 70-200 2.8 soon. But I'll take that 135 1.8 also. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I'll start the show in a second, guys. I'm just trying to get through these hellos. Philip said, another vote for the 85 1.8. Great lens. I'm about to pop open a Sierra Nevada Pale myself. Interesting. Coffee is good too, though. Where was that one? I'll pop it. Oh, yeah, there. Thomas said, I think that Canon needs to stick with the EOS M and work on it. Stuart said, Canons are for shooting old ships. Oh, you guys are shocking. Weary Eyes said, RP for 1600 is way more appealing than the R for 2300. Excited to see the Samyang. I am going to just sort of discuss the RP in a minute. Aaron says, you are nutcases. That's why we love you. I know they are. And like I said, this really is like a bunch of mates sitting around a table. That's why I love it so much. And that's why these shows always go for so long. Stuart says, hang on, I'm swapping over my 100-inch... What's that? 100-inch projector on the PlayStation Pro. Hey, David, where is Kiara? I'm doing a shoot with Kiara on... not today. I'm doing a shoot with Kiara next Friday. We're going to be going around Melbourne and shooting her in all different locations next week. If anyone's local and they want to pop along and tag along with me, just contact me and you can come along and see what I do and stuff like that. So if you'd like to do that, let me know. But I will be photographing Kiara and videoing Kiara next week. So she's still around. It's just we've been busy doing all different things. So she is coming back, Yogi. Photomix says, new gear, a whole new baby. Oh, congratulations, mate. So what did you have, a boy or a girl? Triples says 85 1.8 or 90 2.8 macro. I'd get the 85 1.8. 42 Pro says 85 1.8 is a steal at its current price. It certainly is. Leanna, nice to see you in here. Will we get notice of a fully articulating flip-out screen? Still waiting. Look, tell me about it, Leanna. I'm waiting on that myself. I keep getting abused because I keep asking for flip-out screens and I'm getting all these photographers abusing me saying, David, a photographer doesn't need a flip-out screen. I want one and everyone knows that I want one and I'm not going to be happy until Sony gives me one. Snapclick says, good morning. Aldrich says, laugh out loud. Rick says, I got the 90 macro. It is a very, very sharp lens, that 90 macro, though. A really, really sharp lens. All right, guys, we better start the show because I've gone over already. Let me put in here, show start. Please, if you can, give me a thumbs up. I'd love that because it gets people over onto the show. They know that I'm live. I've got stacks to talk to you about today. So bear with me for 1 minute and I'm going to start the show. G'day everyone from Down Under, here for our live Friday show. Thursday for all of you US people and English European viewers. Obviously, if you're from Australia and New Zealand, we're already into Friday, so we are in the future, so I can tell you things that you don't even know yet. That's one of the advantages about all of this. Cheers, I am having a coffee with you. It's not my multi-coffee today, it's actually a Mexican coffee that you put lemon in it. That's all I can tell you at this stage. So it does look a bit like tea. It is nice. I'm on my second one, so if I do go a bit nuts and start dancing on the table, you guys can pull me back into line. So we just had pre-show. If you are watching this and you hate watching long shows, there will be a timeline that I stick down below. So you can then scroll to whichever article you'd like to look at. And there'll also be links at the bottom of the description going to all of the websites as well. So if you did want to read them later on, you can as well. Now, I've got stacks to cover today, so I think we'll just start, guys. So let's go to the first story. I'm just going to put in here first story. Now, I am going to come back to the questions after each story or after every few stories so we can discuss the stuff live. If I leave it till the end, we forget what we've gone through. So let's go to the first one. Now, this is we've been talking about this for quite some time. Talking about the 135 GM, the 1.8 lens that's going to be announced soon. And it's Nakashita, I think it's pronounced, has confirmed that the rumour we've had for months now is that it's going to be announcing the new 135 1.8 lens, GM lens. It's saying the lens will be announced very soon. Stay tuned on SAR. So it wouldn't surprise me. This could be announced at WWPA. Or it could be sort of announced at any time, really. But it does look like this now is going to be announced. It's an SR5. Usually SR5s, nearly always come true. And this is quite interesting because I'm wondering what this lens is going to be like. Are they going to try and do some of this voodoo magic that they did with the 24 GM and give us a very nice light version and small version of this lens? That would be incredible if they could do that. For us, so it's not so big and so heavy. That's one advantage, I suppose, with the Batis 135 is it is quite nice and light, but it is only a 2.8 lens. So this being a 1.8 lens, it's going to be interesting to see what sort of size that it comes out with. If it's GM, you can probably guarantee that it will have lovely bokeh. Now it is a 1.4, but remember the compression that you're dealing with that lens anyway. You're going to get much nicer sort of depth of field and everything or bokeh than what you would get, say, with something like an 85 or a 55, obviously. It's a lens that I always love using. I did used to use a Sigma years ago and I loved it. This might be one that I'm tempted to get. It depends how much this one actually costs and things, because I'm also interested in the 24 GM. But if this really is an amazing lens, it might be that I get this one rather than the 24. I'll have to wait and see. I just don't want to be going and spending too much money on too many lenses because I don't really need that many lenses. But a 135, as you know, I mostly do shoot portraits and weddings, and a 135 1.8 really does interest me for that fact of being able to get that gorgeous compression and the beautiful shape of the face when you use a 135. 85 is stunning. But a 135 is even nicer if you're dealing with photographing, particularly models, females, and you want that beautiful compression on the face. So I'm really interested in it, and I'm curious to know how this lens is. I still want to try the 105 Sigma lens, the 104 though, and I've tried to contact the local supplier here to see if I can get one to test, because I still would love to try the 105 f1.4. And I'd love to try that comparison between the Sigma 105 f1.4 and the 135 f1.8 to see what difference I'm getting there with that compression and also that difference in aperture. So I'd love to try both of these lenses, but it is quite exciting that Sony's going to release this one soon. They're still not mentioning any of the other lenses though. They're not mentioning whether we're going to get I know people are really waiting for a 35 1.8. A lot of people are really hoping that Sony brings out something around that 35 1.8, a cheaper version of the 35 like they have with the 85. And that's fantastic if you're dealing with coming in at these lower end of models like the A7III. Remember, that camera is classified as an entry-level model for Sony. So if they can give you lenses around that 1.8, that's not the GM versions that people can get a lot cheaper, it'll be fantastic. It's also, then it will be good even if you were using it on the A6400 or the A7000, whatever that is that's going to be announced. So people are still waiting on that, and I'm hoping Sony do announce that. They've been very, very quiet on the APS-C front though, so it's interesting about that discussion, but it does look like we're going to get a 135 very soon. Now, whether that's the only announcement they bring up, we don't know, but it's definitely the only rumour. I am going to go through some other rumours roundup in a minute, but that's really quite interesting. Now, to continue on with that though, so that's the rumour for the 135. It looks like I said, we may get this around the end of February, and it might be done then too because the Canon looks like it might be announced then as well. So this could be some things to try and combat a bit of press and get some press back towards Sony. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in that regard. But before we open up questions, let me bring this chat back, this page back, because I'd like to talk about rumours before I open up the chat. So let's do on Sony Alpha Rumours, there's a rumours roundup. It still looks like that new camera that was announced, or the code that was announced, was the RX02. So it looks like that was the camera that is next going to be announced. They are still saying that there's going to be an EMAC camera though, and also a 100mm 1.4, a 135 f1.8, a 500 and 600mm lenses. If we look down here, they're saying, these are their facts. So they're saying at the moment they believe that Sony registered a new RXO, and they've worked that out because the sizes of the camera were exactly the same as the previous RXO. So it's definitely an RXO2 or something like that. And they're saying that should be announced within the next few months. And there's an article there if you want to click on that. Like I said, I'll share this down below. Fact number 2 is that Sony confirms professional APS-C cameras are on their roadmap. And there's an article there that you can open up to discuss that. They've said all along, or they've given hints that the A7000 is coming, or whether it's an A600 or whatever it is, I don't know. But there's still rumours that that's going to be announced. We don't know when, and my prediction is that's going to come before the A7S III, because everything now is pointing that an A7S III is now, it's getting later and later, which is a bit frustrating, but they keep pushing that rumour back. It says the rumour here is that one more EMAC camera will be announced in Q1 to Q2, 90%. Now, whether that's the... oh, no, that's not it's probably the APS-C, I would say. Rumour is that the A7S III is not going to hit the market in the first half of 2019, and they're saying that's 70% reliable. And rumour is that Sony 8K sensors and new codec specifications are 80% reliable. We've discussed that before, that 8K is coming. We just don't know when. It might appear first in camcorders and then drop down to full frame or whatever, or the Venice, say, type cameras first. So we're still waiting on that. A quick discussion about patents before I open it up to the chat. Sony patented a new 100mm 1.4, so it looks like we're going to get that sometime. The 135 1.8 we've just discussed. A 500mm and a 600mm. Now, we know that due to the Olympics coming in next year, that it's going to happen. I mean, we know that they need long sort of lenses for the Olympics to come out. I still probably believe there'll be an A9 II at the start of next year. Because of the A9 update now, I don't think that there'll be updates in that regard for these cameras this year. Even the A7 III and the A7R3. We may not get updates now due to that new firmware upgrade. That might be Sony tying us over until next year. I'm predicting at the start of next year there'll be an A9 II for the Olympics though. So that's what I think will happen there. And then obviously we'll have something like that 500 f4, and they're also saying a 600mm f4 lens as well is going to be coming. So they'll probably be released about that same time that the A9 II is released. In time for the Olympics. They'll have to make sure they give you enough time to get that out to photographers before that the Olympics actually start. So, you know, we're looking at a few things happening this year, particularly in the lens department, which is fantastic. What else are they saying here? They're also saying that rumour is a new APS-C lens to be announced within the first quarter. They definitely need some APS-C love. There's no point them keep releasing cameras like the A6400 and other cameras if they don't release some lenses for that as well. I know some people say that there's all you need if you talk about Sigma lenses and everything involved in it, but there's not enough native lenses there though, so that's something that they do have to answer, and I'm sure it's just a matter of time before they do. If they don't release any lenses at all, I think APS-C days are numbered, and I don't know whether you're going to agree with that with me or not. But if they don't start supporting it, I think the future may look a little bit bleak in that regard. And it might just be that they start to push everyone onto full frame. But that we'll just have to wait and see what happens in that regard. Another thing they're saying down here soon is that Sigma is soon to be ready to launch their first zoom lens, 70% reliable. Well, we believe that's a 70-200. And rumour Sigma will also launch the first proper mirrorless design FE lenses in 2019. It's 70% reliable as well. And the last rumour is there, new 50mm f1.0 FE lens being developed by a Chinese manufacturer. 100% reliable. Well, that wouldn't surprise me at all. I do think Sony have to answer like Canon in regard to bringing out a fast glass though, just to do it for bragging rights. They've talked about it before that they could easily do a 0.95 or an f1 lens, but they might concentrate on a f1.2. I mean, I would adore if they bring out something like an 85 1.2. I've been dying to get an 85 1.2 lens. So there's some interesting things coming out in the rumour roundup. So let's open it up to the chat because I'd love to know what you guys think about all this stuff. So where did we say we started? Brett's saying g'day, g'day Brett's. Chris is watching from Laguna. I've seen lots of great reviews. I know it will be amazing. Sony's price for the 500 and 600 millimeter will be a king rat. Yeah, well, they will be expensive. Tim, I mean, you have to understand that. Being F4s, though, it might not be ridiculously expensive, but they're not going to be cheap. But if you're in it for sports, that's never really been a consideration for most professional sports shooters anyway. When you're dealing with the 400 2.8, I mean, incredibly expensive. And those shooters know that sort of is the game that they're playing. Same as wildlife shooters. They do spend big money on glass. So Sony do have to have that. If they're going to be serious about having sports cameras and cameras for wildlife and things, they have to be producing lenses around those focal lengths. I'm just trying to come back here. Where was it? Okay, here we go. I like that Sony cup, David. And how nice is that Sony cup? It's cool, isn't it? And I've got my grey balance shirt on today, guys. I've got my Sony grey balance that when I'm shooting outside, I can just use this as the grey to do my white balance on my camera. How cool is that? Thank you, Delta Dave. Why not, Roberto says, why not 1.4 like the 35? Are you talking about the 135, Roberto? Well, there may be an issue with that at this stage due to cost and also weight. So they might have wanted to bring out a 1.8 first. I would have loved a 1.4 as well. Even a 1.2 I would love. We have to wait and see how this lens is. Like I said, it'd be an interesting comparison with looking at, say, how the Sigma lens compares to what the Sony lens is. I have also got the MC11 now, so I'd love someone one day, if they do have one of those lenses, to get in touch with me and we can go and do a shoot, even if it was a Canon lens, because I'd love to test one. But yeah, I wish it was 1.4 as well, but it looks like it's just going to be a 1.8. Everyone's confidence in the Sony 85 has just emptied my wallet. It's now in my cart in B&H. I love it. Stuart says the best flip-out screen ever was on the Sony A99. I know it was. That was a great flip-out screen, Stuart. I agree with you. Casper said too heavy for you, David. It might be that I get it, Casper, but I'd only use it occasionally. That's why I'd love like the Canon 85 1.2. I'd love it as a point of difference, and I've explained that before. It wouldn't be a lens I'd use all the time. I would be, say, using my normal 85 Batis most of the time, but occasionally just to get one out and shoot something that looks different. That's what I'd love it for. That's why I'm not convinced the 135 1.8 is going to be enough difference for me. I'd like to see what it's like first. It might be that I'd like a 1.4. Weary Eyes said, you know the rumour is real when Nishida publishes it. Yes, you do. Roberto says, I'm still waiting for the Sony 24. Have you got it on order? You still can't get those here, though, either. Casper says you hate G-Master lenses. It's not that I hate them, Casper. It's just I've never really had the need for one. Hero says, laugh out loud, Blue, I was going to get the 85 1.8 earlier, and I saw the number for 135, so I held off. Yeah, it might be a good idea, Hero, just to wait to see what cost this comes under. Now, you are going to pay way, way more, though, than what you'll pay for the Sony 85. Remember, this is a G-Master lens, so you're probably going to be 2,500 plus for this lens. We have to wait and see, but I'd be Michael said it as well. Yeah, I agree with what Michael has said there, that you're probably going to be around 2,500 US. It'll be 3.5 Australian. Hero says new lens payment. J Rose says, I think the magic, the voodoo magic is pretty much just limited to wide-angle lenses on mirrorless cameras. I do expect it to be slightly smaller and lighter compared to the FE version of the Sigma 135. Yeah, we hope so. I'm going to show lens comparisons later, actually. There's some lens comparisons we're going to look at in another story later on, which should be really interesting, that will be coming up. Snapclick said, need that lens in my life. Yeah, I'm really tempted too. I can't wait to have a look at it. Sony Pro Support sent me one and didn't want to give it back. Are you talking about the 135, Snapclick? Photomix says, I tried the Sigma 135 on my Nikon and it's nice. Did you like it, Photomix? Did you? That's the 1.4 though, isn't it? I'm sure that's 1.4. Blue said, I think 135 is more high fashion look, but that's just for me. It does have a certain look, yes, but I do shoot a lot of that high fashion type look anyway, so it certainly would shoot the way that I go. 42 Pro said, very solid lens for both video and photos, especially for photos. Snapclick said, the Sigma 105 is amazing. Yep, I'd love to try that lens. I still haven't yet. Stuart says, Sigma 135 art here, love it. Delta Dave said, the 135 1.8 is the superstar of the A-mount lineup still. Oh, that's right, you've got that, haven't you, Dave? Yeah. Sino says, we definitely need an affordable 35 1.8. For that, I'm even considering the EOS R. Yeah, I wish Sony would do that for their users. It would be a great alternative. If you could have, say, the A7III, and you could have, say, that. Remember, my two favorite lenses are the 35 and the 85mm lens. So if you can get those two lenses in 1.8 cheaply, you've got a great setup right from the start without breaking the bank. And I think Sony really should look at that. Brian said, EOS R will have the exact same video specs as the 6D2. We're still waiting on all those yet. Interestingly, you're saying that. Does anyone use a 100mm 2.8 STF GM? Hardly ever hear anything about it. Wondering how it fits between the 85 lenses and this. Look, it is a bit of a strange lens if you're dealing with the 100 STF. It's a beautiful lens. The issue with that lens, and the reason why I've never bought it, is due to the fact that it's so slow. It's around about 5.6 if you're dealing with it for the amount of light that comes in, if you're dealing with the T-stop coming in. So it's about a 5.6. And the other thing too is a lot of the images that I've looked at can look fake. Now, I don't know whether anyone's going to say they believe this, but it tends to have too perfect bokeh. Now, a lot of you might say you can't have too perfect bokeh, but sometimes I've looked at the images and it almost looks like the bokeh has been photoshopped in. And that's another thing that I'm not certain that I would like to try one. I'd love to try it in a model shoot and just give it the benefit of the doubt and try it for that. But it certainly can look a bit fake sometimes, and the 5.6 also can be a bit of an issue. Hero says, wow, 100mm 1.4, amazing. Yeah, that would be a beautiful lens. John says, hi, g'day, John. 42 Pro said 135 on the A6400. A6500 will be 200mm 1.8. Yep, exactly. Roberto said, Snapclick, hopefully it would not take too long. Snapclip said the 100 STF never really interested me. Sino said Sony should give us the option to program the focus ring to control aperture or ISO. I do like that aperture control ring that's on the Canon. I think that's very, very handy, and I do like that a lot. Tim said Sony's price for the 506mm will be a king's ransom. What else have we got? Before we move on to the next story. Snapkick said Bokeh from this. Bokeh is nicer from the Sigma 105 in my opinion. Gerald says the A6000 will be released with new APS-C Pro quality lenses. We hope so, Gerald. Chris said, given the quality and relative small size of their 1.8s like the 55 at 85, one has to wonder if they're planning for people to use smaller full-frame options for their APS-C cameras. And that could be true. That might be one of the things that they're considering, Chris. Now, remember, I'm probably never going to buy another APS-C lens, and I've told you about that before. I would prefer to buy full-frame glass and use that on the APS-C cameras, and then be able to use that full-frame glass on APS-C, and I think that's a real big advantage, and I do prefer that. The issue is if you have APS-C glass and you put it onto, say, the A7III, it goes into Super 35 mode and you get about 11 megapixels. Well, if you buy full frame glass, you don't have to worry about that, so that can be a real big advantage with buying full frame glass for APS-C, but some people haven't got the money to do that. This is why I'm saying also that if Sony brought out a 35 1.8, that would be a great lens to put on an A6 400 where you get roughly a 50mm. And, you know, that would be fantastic for a cheaper lens. Gerald said the A99 II and the 500 and 600 will have to be released in the first quarter of 2020. Yep, I agree with you, exactly. G'day, Panda. Good to see you in here. If Sony released a 16 to 55 2.8, my APS-C needs would be met. So said, I would love to have the 500mm f4. I'll just postpone my wedding. The Panda says f1.4 is being greedy. I love it. Michael keeps retracting messages. What are you saying, Michael? John Smallbridge said, interesting to me that everyone has forgotten about the beautiful 100. And I did discuss that, yeah. And you know what? If they do bring out 100 1.4, that probably will kill it. Punk said the XT3 is going to dominate 2019. Panasonic and Sony don't know what's coming with Atmos and Fuji at NAB. The lenses are cheaper and easier to focus, smaller body and treat to grade at 10-bit. Look, I've got no problem with the XT3 at all, Punk. I think that's a fantastic camera. It's not going to beat an A7 III though. Yes, it might if you go for an external monitor due to the bit rates and stuff that you can put out. But it's still an APS-C camera and it's never going to beat full frame. That's just what I believe. It's still a great camera though, so I'm not knocking it. I think it's a fantastic camera and I think Sony do have to answer that. Just wait until we see what the A7000 has though. You might find that that's going to blow, and I think it will, blow the XT3 out of the water. Punk said, better colour on the Fuji 2. Honestly, go pick it up if you haven't. Well, I don't think the colour, that's true, Punk. I'm very, very happy with how the Sonys look. Just check my work, go to my Instagram page and tell me the colour doesn't look amazing. Sony looks like China at this time. All right, let's go next story. Now, I wanted to talk to you about just the EOS RP just for a few minutes to have a quick look at it. I know I put a video up about it the other day. I just read one rumour on Engadget. They were talking that the price was still $1,300. So it's still up for a bit of discussion about how much this camera is going to come in at. It's saying there $1,599. It's still pretty cheap though for what it is. But if it doesn't have 4K, they really are holding back on what the camera is going to give us, because they haven't mentioned anything about that yet. But there certainly is some interesting things. I'm only going to go through this quite quickly. It's got a 26.2 megapixel sensor. It has dual pixel CMOS AF. And just on that, the interesting thing now is that with the new updates that Sony are bringing out, particularly with the A6 400 and the A9, I think Sony has gone ahead now in the focusing department. I think Sony, for the first time, has leapfrogged Canon in the autofocus department. We still have to remain, I suppose, to see it when it gets into the hands of real photographers. But from the reviews, it looks like it's going to be incredible. I mean, I'll let you know as soon as I upgrade it. I'll do some tests and let you know. But it certainly looks like, from the reviews that I've seen, that Sony has leapfrogged Canon now in that dual pixel. And even if they haven't leapfrogged, they're certainly on par now. I think even the A7 III is on par with anything that Canon have got now in focus. Or they're so close it doesn't matter anymore. But certainly with the A9, with the new tracking and the new AIF that is going to be on the A7 III and the A7R III, I think Sony have sort of leapfrogged Canon in that regard. It used to be that Canon was definitely in front, but I don't think that's true anymore. Anyway, it's got dual pixel CMOS, it's got Digit 8, it's got continuous shooting at 5 frames a second, ISO sensitivity of 100 to 4000, 40,000 I mean, and you have got extended ISO there. Organic EL EVF. It's got a 3-inch touch panel, variable angle liquid crystal. It's got dual sensing image stabilization, DLO in camera, RAW development in camera, and C-RAW compatible, which is fantastic. I so wish Sony would bring out something like C-RAW, you know, to give you the ability in, say, the A7R III to have a lower quality RAW file would be amazing. And, you know, I would adore that if they brought that out, especially if you're using that for weddings and things like that. I mean, do you guys, let me know in the chat, would you guys love something like Canon C-RAW? Would you love a low option RAW capability in, say, something like the Sony A7R III? But the interesting thing is, and this is fascinating, that they're saying that the body only is 440 grams. It really is incredibly light. So it must be made from like composite materials. It must be mostly plastic if that's the case. That doesn't bother me at all. For an entry-level camera, I think that's fine. Particularly if this was a vlogging camera and it's that light and you had to hold it up, say, on a gimbal or something like that. Having it that light would be amazing. So in one way, that's really great. But looking at it, it looks quite nice. You can see there's no top LCD. They have got rid of the top LCD, but it looks like they've only got an on-off button. I don't know whether that button can be programmed for anything else. It's a big area just to have an on-off, which is interesting. There is another dial here, though, probably programmable, obviously. But the flip-out screen I would adore, and I so hope Sony brings out something like this. I know you photographers are going to say, don't need it. But I say to you photographers that say you don't need it, leave it closed. You don't need to use it. That's one of the great advantages like this. The cameras have 4K. Not everyone uses it, but the advantage is that if you do want to use it, the 4K is there. So why not put it on? And I did have a big discussion about this today with Daniel, actually. I was saying that the problem is that, and I'll explain exactly why, because you get kids that go into the shop, or this is what kids do all the time now. I can tell you, you look at any kid now, say between any teenager, even younger than that now, all they're ever doing is doing selfies like this. This is all they're ever doing, is looking at themselves on the screen and doing selfies. That's what they do. Now, I can tell you that if they go into the shop and they look at a Sony a6400 and it has a screen that does that, all right, and then they look at the Canon, and then it has a screen that does that, they are going to buy the Canon every single time. And I can tell you that's going to be fact, because people coming into the shops don't care about whether the quality is any better. And I can tell you, because look, I was a university lecturer for 20 odd years, and I used to teach photography. And the people that used to come in always used to ask me for advice, and they had no idea. They would just go into the shop and believe whatever the camera salesman told them, and they would always be looking at, say, Canon or Nikon or Pentax in those days. I mean, that's really all that they looked at. They didn't care about the features, and they really bought whatever the salesman actually sold them. But I'm telling you that the way kids think now, children nowadays and teenagers are in the selfie, vlogging, YouTube world. YouTube is massive for kids. They don't watch TV anymore. My grandchildren do not watch TV. All they watch is YouTube every day. instead of watching television. And they're used to this selfie world. Now, if Sony don't give that to someone, eventually it's going to hurt them. And I can tell you, if Canon go down that avenue, it will take sales away from the A6400. And that's why I can't understand why Sony didn't bring out a flip-out screen. But let me know in the chat whether you think I'm right. I know the photographers out there are putting blinkers on and you're going like this, saying, you know, I don't want it, I don't want it. Well, leave it closed, but you have got the option to open it if you need to. Remember, kids in the future, it's going to be demanded. That there's not going to be any such thing as a photographic camera in probably a couple of years. And what I'm saying is it will be all fusion. It will be all dealing with doing video and stills at the same time. They're hybrid because video and stills are going to become the one job. And you're seeing it now that a lot of people are asking for video and stills all the time. Even for me, it's made my business grow crazy because I can offer a video at the same time as I can do stills. So that's going to be the future, guys. It's going to be a future of having video. Everyone wants to put videos up of Instagram. They want to do the stories. They want to use Facebook video and stuff like that. So they want cameras that will do both. And having that flip out screen makes all the difference. I can tell you, mark my words, come back in a couple of years and I'm going to say I told you that was going to happen. So let's open that. Oh, now before we do that, I'm going to show you a couple more things on this EOS R because I wanted to show you the comparison between the Sony A7III and the EOS R. You can see it's quite small. It does seem to have a lovely grip that's facing forward though. I must admit that the grip on the Sony, I'm used to it now and it doesn't bother me at all. I mean, it's, you know, if you look at the, say the A9 here, it's at the front there. The Canon, if you're looking at it from an ergonomic perspective, which is how everyone tends to look at them, it is in a nicer position, a little bit more forward, facing forward. You can see the back of the camera there. It's a little bit lower, isn't it, than the Sony if you look between the two of them through here. From the front, pretty similar. If anything, though, the Sony seems to have a bit more of a rounded grip, which is interesting. It looks like the Sony, if you're looking at that, is slightly better in the grip department there, which is, you know, quite interesting. Now, they are saying in here, and this is the interesting thing because we just had some people in the chat say no 4K, but we've got here that the Canon is going to be $15.99, the Sony A7III is going to be $19.99. But I have noticed that a couple of places are saying you can get it a fraction cheaper for the first time. I noticed here in Australia, I got a message yesterday, I think it was $200 off here in Melbourne, which is the first time I've seen the Sony A7 III discounted. Canon RF lenses, Sony E-mount lenses, 26.2, 24, nothing in the sensor size really, but they are saying it'll be 4K 30 with crop, and they're going to probably give you that 1.5 times crop, which sucks. 4K 30 with no crop, 100 to 40,000, obviously 100 to 5100. You'd say the ISO is definitely going to be better in the Sonys. They always are. Swivel touchscreen, tilting touchscreen, 5 frames per second, 10 frames per second, no in-body stabilization. It uses lens stabilization, but they do say, I must admit, I've used the Canons before and the lens stabilization is very, very good. They're actually saying that it's around about 5 stops, so it is very, very good if you've got a lens with stabilization in it. In-body stabilization, but that does give you the advantage you can use any lens though in the Sony A7S III. So if you use an unstabilized lens in the EOS R, obviously you don't have stabilization. Not weather sealed body. So that's interesting. So they're saying there's no weather sealing at all. So that was one thing that I wanted to show you about that. So, you know, it's quite interesting. So let's open up the chat quickly and we'll just go through and see what you're saying about that. Where did we start? I'm just going to fill up my coffee. I might have a third coffee after this. That really will get me in the mood to party. Kerry's off today. She's actually home. She's inside the house. We'll go and party for the whole afternoon. Gerald says he has the 24 2.8 and it's stunning. It is. That is an amazing lens. Probably one of the best gimbal lenses you can buy too. It really is stunning, and I would like to get that lens sometime. Punk says they can't kill the A7000. They would be cannibalizing their real cameras. This is the world we live in. Panda says if anyone is reading about China in the news, they're going to go global domination. Oh, I haven't read that, Panda. J Rose says I think the RP has 4K, but it's probably going to be cropped like that. Yeah, look, no doubt Canon are going to crop it. When are Canon going to learn to treat their users with respect? And this drives me nuts. Now, you know I'm exactly the same with Sony. I went on about their firmware update, and 2 weeks later it came out. They probably didn't listen to me, but, you know, it's... Canon, what are you doing? If you brought out those cameras without a crop, and there's no reason in 2019 to bring out a camera with a 1.5 crop, honestly, it's nuts. They would sell so well with people like me, for instance, if they didn't have that ridiculous crop. I know, it's nuts. I just don't know what they're thinking. Tim says the autofocus on the A7 III is the best I've ever used. And you're right, Tim. The autofocus now on Sony cameras is incredible, and it really is incredible. I mean, yes, they used to bag us when I had the A7 II, and I did notice a difference when I had the A7 II. But now, with the A7 III and the A9, and this new firmware is going to put them to a new league, I think Sony is by far now the best focusing cameras on the market, easily. Snapclick said, what are you talking about? He's talking about China. Punk says, the new Canon will be every dad's best friend. It's going to sell to pro vloggers that thought the A6400 was a beast. Yeah. Look, I think it will sell. And I'm being totally honest to you guys. If Sony don't bring out something that has a pull-out screen, I might end up getting one of these Canons or something that have a full screen. I'm not going to use it for my job because I'm still going to be using this. You can't beat this. But when I want to, say, vlog, like do the videos I do where I'm doing all stuff for you and filming like Kiara I'm going to be doing next week in the city and things like that, having that flip back screen where I can do things very, very easily is a massive advantage for me. And yes, I know a lot of you aren't vloggers and you don't care, but I can tell you if you are a vlogger and this is the future doing this type of work, flip-out screens are amazing, and this is why eventually I so hope Sony brings out one. That's why I've been disappointed with the A6400. I just don't think it's a good solution for that. I might get one because I might get one just to review for you guys, but it's not a camera I'm excited to get, that's for sure. But I'm just so hoping they give us one with a true fold-out screen. If they don't, I might definitely get something like this Canon RP, or I may even get the high-end model if that also has a flip-out screen. I mean, I don't know, but it's only going to be for my vlogging stuff and the YouTube stuff. I'm never going to get rid of the Sony for my work because I just adore it. What else have we got? Gerald says, worth your wait. Oh, that's the 24, yep. John says, Canon may be already be hurting Sony by eliminating people from jumping ship to Sony and drawing people back to Canon from Sony. Well, there's no way I would go back from Sony to Sony, I'd go to Canon if I had Sony now. There's no way I would go from having an A7 III to the Canon EOS RP. No way. Because it's still a much better camera. But like I said, for an extra camera for me, it certainly interests me due to that flip-out screen. And the lenses also really interest me because no matter what you say, if you hate Canon or whatever, their lenses are stunning, probably the best in the business. The RF lenses that they're bringing out are really tremendous lenses. And like I've said to you all before, the gear is gear at the end of the day. I'm an artist. I want to be thought as an artist. And at the end of the day, it's all a tool. But the Canon lenses are beautiful. But they haven't brought out a body that justify those lenses yet. And that's half of the problem. And I don't understand Canon for doing that. My prediction is they will bring out some monster EOS R sometime this year. A very high megapixel camera. Hopefully that then gets rid of the crop and things like that. And that could be a really interesting one. The Panda says, Sony has a win in the bag. I think Canon needs to worry about Panasonic pushing them back even more. I think the Canon, I would prefer the Canon than I would the Panasonic, I think. Only because there's much more lenses out there. It'll be a more supported system. But let's wait and see what the full reviews are when they come out. I mean, it'll be interesting to see. The Panasonic, the letdown with the Panasonic is the autofocus. I mean, it's contrast detection. That throws that out for me right from the beginning. So, you know, it really is an issue having contrast detection. You cannot beat physics. If you look at all the reviews that were out there, they were mostly all with an f4 lens, and I could still see pulsing in the background for the out of bokeh images. When they start to show images with these fast glass, they're going to pulse like crazy. I can guarantee they will pulse in the background. It's contrast detection. It has to go past the image, back past it again, and then lock into focus. It's the way that technology works. I just cannot understand why Panasonic brought out didn't go for phase detection. I really don't understand that at all. Love it. Blue says, that's only 300 less than the A7 III. I'll just save the difference and get a Sony. Luke is saying the 6D Mark II of mirrorless. Yeah, maybe, Luke. Josh says, this price of the new Canon 1300 gets you a used 42 megapixel 4K A7R II. And I have the A7R. That's what I'm using now. I'm actually using the A7R II, which is an amazing camera. You could be right there. Still, I probably would get this over. I probably would buy the Canon over an A7R II if I was buying new now. Only because of that flip-out screen for me. But I suppose if you're in the Sony realm and you're going to stay in Sony, and a used A7R II is a great value camera. It only has the one card slot too, like the Canon does. That's why I don't really like using it now for professional work. Gerald said, Sony compressed RAW is good enough for most shots. Michael says 440 grams, that thing is made out of cardboard. Yeah, I don't know how they've done that, Michael. It seems ridiculously light. 42 Pro says, I hope that the RP will have 4K, but even if Canon uses the same playbook and pulls the 6D Mark II release, it will still have great potential as a vlogging camera. Yep, it will. Let me read a couple of others because we need to move on. Snapclick said, I get my news from David Oastler. Much less depressing. John says, it's a shame Canon won't produce new sensors. I know they really haven't, have they? They've just been sort of rebranding the sensors the whole time. They need to do a Sony. I mean, why on earth don't they just use Sony sensors? Tox said the Canon EOS R is no match for the older Sony A7 III. I do not agree with you, David. The kids will pick the A6400 before the EOS RP. The A6400 is cheaper and has a flippy screen. Well, I don't agree with you, Tox. I think Canon still has a bigger name out there in the industry, but like, you're entitled to your opinion. I think if you look at how well the EOS M50 has sold, it has sold incredibly well, even though the camera was basically crap. It's still sold incredibly well. I think this probably will sell like hotcakes. If you can get a full frame camera for a little bit more expensive and it has a flip out screen, I don't agree with you, Tox. I think you're completely wrong, but let's see what happens. Mad says, I exclusively watch YouTube as well. This is true. Gian says that RP camera has the potential to be a nightmare for Sony, Panasonic. Yeah, YouTube is the devil, Michael said. I love it. Panda says, but Tim Heist, but the articulating screen doesn't flip out, and if you add a shotgun mic, it's the same as the A6400. The Canon, you can add a flip out. You can add a top microphone though. See, Josh says, I'm a photographer and I think the fully articulating screen is essential. How do you take a waist level portrait photo otherwise? Sure, you can crouch on the ground. It's not the same. This camera with a good lens is 4,300-ish. Give me an A9. But you don't. You can get the 35 cheaper lens though, Luke. Which if you go back, I discussed the Canon EOS R and lenses you can buy cheaply, and it wasn't that expensive. I'm just scrolling down because we better move on. Stacey said, I left Canon because of their attitude of holding back features on cameras. I've been through several Sony camera models and feel Sony is trying to give me what I want. Exactly. And that's about it. Okay, let's go to the next story. So the next story is this. This is interesting, and I'm so hoping this comes out in the A7R3. A7S3, I mean. I'm hoping that they give us a version of this Venice camera updated profile. I notice if you've got an SF, the SF5, I think they are, or I think it's FS5, aren't they? You've got an upgraded firmware or updated Venice firmware upgrade. It brings 4K 120p on this, if you look down here, which is incredible. I mean, a massive camera, and you know, you're talking about a very, very expensive camera here. But it gives you this also an optional of this very high frame rate license. It arrives in June. It will be a paid one, I'd say. I don't think that you'd be getting it for nothing. I think that you'd actually have to pay for this. But there has been rumours around that Sony would offer. Apparently, the colour science has also been improved in this latest Venice. And there's been rumours coming around that this could be put into the Sony A7III. And this could be part of what the Sony execs were talking about, that when they said they were going to pass users' expectations. And this could be one thing that we may get. I'm not saying that you'll get the 4K 120, but you may get 4K 60 with the Venice colour, and that would be incredible. Amazing, in fact. We still are waiting. Like I said, there's rumours now that we're not going to get the A7S3 until halfway through the year. It may be that they're having issues with heat on that camera. So we just have to see. I mean, even Panasonic are having issues in their full frame with 4K 60 due to the time limit that they've put in. I think, what is it, 15 minutes or something? There is a time limit involved. And they have put a warning there that it can overheat. So Sony are also going to have to come against those problems. They may have a better processor, though, that runs a bit cooler. So that can have an effect as well. So let's hope that is the case. But I would love Sony to put some of this Venice colour into their full-frame cameras. They may not do it because they might want to protect their high-end line, but they have improved the colour science with every generation of camera that's come out. They've also said, I believe in the A9, that the colour is going to be improved with the latest firmware upgrade. So it's probably going to match what the A7III is. Or it might even be slightly better. And I would believe that the A7S3, when it's announced, and the A7000 probably will have better colour as well. And you never know, they may bring some of this Sony Venice colour down. I mean, I'd love them to put 120 frames per second in. We may not get that at 4K. I doubt it. But it's certainly going to be interesting. I'm not going to open up the questions yet because I'd like to keep moving. The next story is this. Samyang apparently are going to launch a new 85 1.4 FE lens within 1 to 2 months. And they're saying it's going to be based on the Canon version. And that is, what, $579 they're saying. But interesting. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm a little bit surprised that they're talking about bringing out an 85 again. I mean, do you guys really believe that we need another 85mm? Particularly seeing that, you know, we've got all these other lenses out there. We've got the 85 Batis, we've got the 85 1.8, we've got the 85 G Master, we've got Sigma lenses. Do you think we need another lens? I suppose it's going to be a nicer, cheap option. Did they say that's autofocus? I'm just trying to read whether it says autofocus. It doesn't say. It probably is, but it doesn't say, I don't think. Oh, it is. Have faster autofocus performance. Yeah, so it is autofocus. So it could be an interesting one if you want to get in a little bit cheaper, if you're after the 85, particularly that's an 85 1.4. We'll have to wait for the reviews of this, obviously, to see how it performs. But the Samyang seem to have really improved their lenses over time now, and they really are quite competent now. So it's an interesting one. Love to know what you think about that. How long have I been on for? 1 hour, 4 minutes. Woohoo! Let's go to next story, and then I'm just going to open up questions. Panasonic, I wanted to show this just for lens size comparison. We did talk about this a little bit earlier. If you look at the Panasonic 24-105, you can see it really is a large lens. I mean, the G Master here is actually looking the smallest if you look at them all up. But the Panasonic's massive, isn't it, compared to the others? It really is a large lens. And even the width of, say, the Canon is very, very large as well. It just shows that the G Masters are pretty good in their size. I mean, look at the difference here, though. I mean, this is incredible that you're dealing here with a Panasonic 50 1.4. Look at the size difference there. That is massive. The Panasonic lenses do look gorgeous. I mean, they do look like a stunning lens, beautifully manufactured and everything. But the G Master is as well. But boy, that size would be heavy to lug around, I think. You're talking about a massive size difference there. Was that the only two? Yes, it was. So let me know in the chat what you think about that. The grip, if you like bigger cameras, if you're looking at the Panasonic, the grip obviously is really nice. I mean, it does look like it's got a really nice grip that you would be able to hold onto. I know guys that have very large hands struggle with the grip here, that you haven't got enough room between here, whereas the Panasonic, you know, you're going to have enough room between this section to hold onto the camera. But again, you know, you've got the LCD over here too, and like I said, I know some people love the LCD. I'd prefer another switch there like what the A9 has. I just prefer the tactile controls rather than the screen that you can just see looking through the EVF anyway. But I thought I'd just share that with you because it really is interesting to see how big the Panasonic lenses are. Incredible. And the last thing I wanted to discuss was this, because let me just come to here for a second. The last story is actually going to discuss looking at how medium format now is very, very close in quality, or full frame quality is very, very close to medium format quality. I used to shoot medium format when I used to shoot fashion. I used to actually even teach it when I taught in university, medium format. And in those days particularly, there was a massive difference in the quality of the images that came out, particularly in detail and things like that. But nowadays, there's not so much. And I found this really interesting article, and I'm going to put this down below, so you will see it if you click on the links at the bottom. But this is talking about the Fujifilm GFX, the 50R, and it's this first review that's coming out. And it's really interesting. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but they're talking about that you get better tonal... well, the reason why they're saying this is because the sensor... is actually larger, that you're getting more light on the actual sensor. So you get things like better tonal gradation, detail, and things like that in medium format. But they're saying really in real life that there's no real difference now between, say, they're talking here about the Z7, and this would be the same if you were talking about the Sony A7III. And particularly as you get up with the newer sensors that are going to be 60 plus 100 megapixel sensors that are coming out. But this test, and you can do it yourself, but see there's a little box that's scrolling there. Now, when you move that around, it will show detail, and you can check the side by side, which is really quite interesting when you look at it. And the one on the left-hand side here is the GFX, and the one on the right-hand side is the Z7. You know, and you look around and you can really check out the whole thing and just sort of see what the difference is between the two. And, you know, it's very, very close. Very, very close. And there's a whole article talking about it in here, how actual close the two sensors are. It's a pity they didn't do a product shot, because I would have loved to have seen, say, something like a watch in detail as well. And that would have been fantastic to actually compare it that way as well. But the interesting thing is here, and I've often said this, and have a read of this article and see what you think, but the difference is not as big as what it used to be now because of these high... the sensors like what the Sony give you, the A7R III, the Z7, are incredible in what they give you in their sensors now. The dynamic range is amazing and everything else. Yes, the sensor is much larger in medium format, much larger, but the results aren't really showing that much of a step, and it really is interesting. I would have loved them to have done, like I said, a comparison in detail, because you would mostly use something like medium format, like I used to use it, where you're shooting fashion or you're shooting product photography, things like that, where you want to show detail in a watch, stuff like that. So I would have loved it if they gave us an image like that we could really zoom in on and check that. But I think you'd find the detail is not that great anymore. It really isn't. The sensors now are getting so good in full frame. The advantage with full frame is the focus is obviously much quicker. You can work faster and everything else. If you go to medium format, you have to be much slower and more methodical in what you do. And that's not a bad thing if you're dealing with using medium format in a studio type scenario. But if you're doing events and weddings and things like that, I think going full frame has a much bigger advantage, than using medium format. But it's just showing how far the cameras have come. Now, I don't blame Fuji for going medium format. I think in a way it was very, very smart of them, because they decided they weren't going to tackle full frame like what Panasonic have done. So they've sort of made a niche market for themselves, and they are bringing out a 100 megapixel camera, and there's probably going to be much higher sensors that will come out that are probably going to be amazing. So in a way, Fuji have done a good job concentrating on APS-C and doing medium format and letting everyone else battle out for the full frame sector. But that's an interesting comparison. I'd love you to go and have a look at that and talk about that in the comments box down below. So I really would love that to actually happen. All right, guys, we're going to open up to questions. So let me bring this back. I'd love it too if you could give me a thumbs up, guys. It just means other people tune in and watch the show. We've got 66 likes, which is fantastic. I really appreciate that. So let me clear off this lens, and we're going to have a bit of a discussion for a few minutes. We've been on an hour and 5 minutes, so I've talked away again. Panda says, people have been saying APS-C is dead since Sony A7, and look now. Michael said, Canon will always make their own sensors. Canon don't want to be handicapped kind of like Nikon. Yeah, and that's probably a good point, Michael, because Sony do tend to keep their new sensors to themselves. Look at the A9, that's gone to no one. G'day, I'm DeBrown, good to see you in here. Carl says, APS-C Mortis. The Panda says, I want to see that module sign cameras are about, if anyone hear about them. Michael says, now that's a nice piece right there. You're talking about the FS, the Venice. Gerald says, it says right in the article, the Venice update is free. Oh, I didn't read that, Gerald. Fantastic. The FS7 and FS5 are going to be so nice. No, my comments aren't worth reading, but I shoot documentary. Why are you saying that, Punk? I always read comments. But I shoot documentary with them regularly. The A7S will have QXD cards and 4K 120 external. Tim says the A7S III won't be able to dissipate heat enough for the high frame rates, in my opinion. Carl says EF mount is dead. Langston says, I don't know if you cut out the right pipeline and put that on the external recording device could work. And you're right, that's why the Nikon has the going out to the Ninja. That's why Panasonic also does that to get the ultimate frame rates and things like that. There's talk that other cameras may do it too. Panasonic are going to be doing that. Michael said, yes, it's the AF. Yes, the AF is not going to be good on that Panasonic. Panda says, anyone likes the Confinity module sign cameras? I haven't heard about them, Panda. Carl says, Samyang should have made it RF mount, not EF. Tim said, I believe Sony has kept body sizes small even at the expense of some functionality. And you know what, Tim? I do like that. I actually love the size of the A9 and A7 III bodies. I really do. And you know that I've even got battery grips and I never use them. I love that size. I would be prepared to let that go a little bit, though, to add a flip-out screen. You'd only be talking a millimetre or two. I would be prepared to put up with that. Chris said, really like my Rockion 35 1.4. Won't get the 85 since I already have the 85 1.8. But it's likely to be a decent option for people to consider, and more options are always better. Yeah, I mean, I'd have to see how it works in real life, but I probably would still say you'd go for the 85 Sony due to the fact that you're going to get the 20 frames per second if you've got the A9, and you're almost certainly going to get better focus. What else have we got? Tim said the space gap between the grip and the 2470 GM is way too small for my big hands. Yeah, and a lot of people have been talking about that, Tim, as well, that it is an issue if you've got larger hands. But if you have larger hands, then really all you need is the grip. It's a necessity if you have larger hands. Michael says, I think the cheaper and keeper, the 85 1.4. I think the keeper. I'm not sure what that means, Michael. Might be about $600, hopefully bring it on. Panda says, I wouldn't be surprised if the Samyang optics and Sony come together just like Leica and Sigma. Wolfpack said, how would you recommend Australians to get the A7S3 ASAP when it's released? Australia was largely ignored when it came to stock of the A7III. I got mine on day one. I would say you've got to pre-order it. You have to pre-order it through a store. And that's the way to get it on day one, Wolfpack, definitely. If you don't do that, you're going to be waiting weeks and weeks. Jeffrey says, did you see the new Canon lenses rumoured to be released? The 70-200 f2 looks, yeah, it does. It looks really compact, that lens. Now, I'm not sure whether that's due to the mount or what. It's really interesting, and I'm not sure whether that's the photo doing that, but it does look tiny, and I can't wait to really see that. If that's true, it's fantastic. Great if you're a wedding photographer. Carl says, if you're going to medium format, hold out for the 100 megapixel sensor. Yep. Blue said, literally just bought this Sony 85 1.8, so I wouldn't need another 85, even 1.4. Not sure I gain much for my photography. Well, I use the 85 1.8 too, and I'm very, very happy with it. Michael said, to me, the S1 lens mount hype is nothing more than Sigma, Zeiss, Samyang, and Sony all making glass for the FE mount. What's the difference? They all make glass for the one mount. I don't understand all this talk about the mount hype either, Michael. I'm with you. And you know what? Who cares? There's already lenses around that can do 0.95 for Sony. Yes, they don't do autofocus, but Sony have said they can do a 1.2 with autofocus. You don't need lenses faster than 1.2. They said they could do an f1 lens, but the focus will be that narrow that you would never use it. I mean, if you can get a 1.2 lens in Sony, I would be more than happy for it. I think the lens mount is just something that other manufacturers or the other fanboys love to quote because they always have to have something to knock Sony on. It used to be the battery, it used to be the focus, it used to be the EVF, it used to be the color. They always will find something, and at the moment, it's the mount. And it's all a load of crap. Let's have a bit more coffee. Gerald said, the usability of medium format is fast-moving scenarios, still favours the full-frame cameras. Yes, it does. Medium format isn't for fast-moving scenarios. David said, use my A7III mainly for video and use a cheaper range of Sony primes. Is the extra quality gained by upgrading to Zeiss or G-Master lost on video? Faster autofocus. Well, I can tell you that my favourite lens is the Sony, this one, for video. So that's not, well, I mean, it's not cheap, but that to me is the best lens I've ever used in video. I can also tell you that I've used the Tamron 28-75 in video, and it was stunning. So you don't need to don't need to use expensive glass, no, to get beautiful results. You don't. I think you can easily use something like the Sony 85 1.8, brilliant. The 55 1.8 is brilliant. The Tamron 28-75 is amazing for video. And also, if you wanted to say not spend as much on a G-Master lens, the 24 1.4 also would be incredible. That's nice and light, and dead sharp, but a beautiful lens. J-Ro said, I'm curious about the 100 megapixel Fuji cameras coming out with IBIS and phase detection. Focus on the sensor. It will be interesting to see if the AF speed is good. Yeah, it will be. John says, David, do you think the average person, not camera geek, sees useful differences between between 4K and crop? No, I don't. I don't think the only people that worry about these sort of things are us. The only people that worry about color science are photographers, the pixel peepers. The only thing that worry about resolution are us. I can tell you, you look through Facebook and you'll see the most crap work from these photographers that have no idea what they're doing, and then everyone will get on there going, oh my God, that's an amazing photo, it's just brilliant, it's beautiful. I'm looking at going, are you serious? I never comment on it, but it's true. The average user would never know the difference. I could shoot APS-C and my clients would not be able to tell the difference. None. But I can tell, and I love the look of full frame for me. That's the only reason, but my clients wouldn't be able to tell the difference. I think you care once you have the choice. Yeah, and that's the thing. We care because we know what we're looking at. That's the difference. David, please be my grandpa. I love it. Panda says, Sony claims to not add fully articulating screens due to the weather sealing. Well, that's rubbish because, look, the Panasonic GH5 is as weather sealed as you can get, and that is a fully articulating screen. That's crap by Sony if they say that. I was going to grab some more drink and it's empty. Sony, stop the crap. Just tell the truth. You just don't want to give it to us. Graphic says, David, who wants to pack and carry a Sony and a Canon? 2 separate lens collections for each camera? No thanks. You have to choose the manufacturer who you believe interests in your heart. And that is a good point. But remember, for me, I would only probably take one lens with me if I was dealing with vlogging. So that camera, if I was doing it with vlogging, say next Friday shoot with Kiara, I'd be using my Sony gear to do the photography. But for the video side of things, I might just have the 24-105 f4 on there. And that's all I'd leave on it. I'm not going to be changing cameras. It's like most of the time when I'm shooting video. Look at the one I just did of Kate. And it was shot the total time with a 55 1.8 on there. I can easily do the whole video, say, with a 50mm on there. And that would be perfect just for doing what I need to do. And I'd be happy with that. So I'm not carrying multiple lenses and multiple cameras. It wouldn't make any difference to me. You sure that's coffee? Yeah, it sure is coffee, Panda. Gerald says that Sony Venice camera uses both PI and E mount lenses and is good enough for Oscar winner James Cameron for his Avatar blockbuster movie. Exactly. Michael said, David, camera conspiracies had you on his last video. I know, I saw it. I laughed when I saw it on there. Love that guy. His channel is going nuts. I can remember he was way under me and now he's gone way past me for subscribers. But fantastic bloke. And he seems so down to earth, and I always comment on his videos. Really great bloke. I hope one day he comes out here because I'd love to take him around. I'd love to do some shoots with him. What else have we got? Delta Dave said, IQ of medium format is superior to full frame, the same way full frame is superior to ASP. It's light physics. Yeah, and it's very hard to see though, Dave, but you're right, there will be a difference. Casper said, Sony. Casper said he's on his last coffee. Kieran says, when do you think the Tamron or Sigma will release a 100-600 lens for E-mount? And where's a good place to know when it happens first? I'll pre-order the bejesus out of that lens. Well, I think Tamron hopefully will contact me when the 70-200's announced, because I did pre-test the other one, the 28-75, so I'm hoping that I will be told. I probably won't be able to tell you though, but I can tell you at this stage I haven't been asked to do anything. But there was rumours it's going to come out fairly early in the new year. I haven't heard about the 150-600. I think the next lens from Tamron will be the 70-200. Oh, thank you so much, Michael. Really appreciate that. I think the next lens that comes out will be the 70-200 f2.8 from Tamron. And then the one after that will probably be a 16 to 35 or ish lens that comes out of that. Then you've got that holy trinity of the lenses, the 16 to 35, or it might be 15 to whatever, the 28 to 75 and the 70 to 200. I think they'll be the lenses that Tamron release first, but I can't wait for them to do that. They will produce more and more, but Tamron, I think, are having trouble even keeping up with the orders for the 28 to 75. It's still hard to get. Kieran also said, Google KYDDD. When is the firmware for the EOS R coming? Has Canon forgotten us? Tox said, by David Oastler standards, it doesn't matter what Sony or Panasonic does. Kids are going to roll with Canon. So in that case, Sony should concentrate on the users that know what they are doing. Now, that's not true, Tox. If Sony brought out a fully articulating screen, they'd have a chance to grab those sales. And that's what I'm saying. Canon, look, you have to look at it realistically. Canon is much bigger in the marketplace than what Sony are. And if you don't believe that, you've got blinkers on, Tox. Seriously, if you think Sony have a bigger name in the industry for cameras overall, you've got blinkers on. Canon is still way, way ahead. And if you go and ask any people out there if they know Canon or if they realise Sony did cameras, Canon would outnumber Sony that much, it would be unbelievable. I love Sony, but I'm still a realist, and there's no way that Sony at this stage have got a bigger name than what Canon have. They may have in full frame, but if you're dealing with Canon overall, Canon would absolutely destroy Sony if you're dealing with overall camera sales. And everyone in this chat would agree with that. Full frame, no. But if you're talking about overall, yes, they're not even in the market. But I think if Sony are growing and growing, so Sony are definitely going to get bigger, and they are selling more and more. And if they keep going like they're going, there's no reason why Sony could not be number one in the future. But at this stage, they're not. And I'm not going to lie to you and say Sony are number one. They're not. They're number one for full frame, but they're certainly not number one for cameras in general. And do your research, Tox, if you think I'm telling lies. Just look up camera numbers. What else? Tox said, I never said Sony was bigger name than Canon. Read my comment again. I'm not going to argue with the Tox anyway. Casper said, you're not going to invite me and Maestro. Yeah, I certainly will, Casper. You guys are all welcome to come down here anytime. I'd love you guys to come to Australia and I'll show you around. We can have a coffee together. We can probably have 2 or 3 coffees together. Tim said, Chris, okay, enjoy. I had the Tamron 70-200. The Tamron, the G2, I think that's what it's called. The G2 is an incredible lens. Just try it one time if you can, guys. That G2 is actually, I tested one, and it was sharper than the Nikon 70-200 version 2 that I had. It is a stunning lens. If they can get the Tamron to be as sharp as that as it is for the G2, we're in for a winner if they can announce that for the E-mount. I can't wait. Zame said, Mario said, hello, I'm way too late. Yeah, you're near the end, Mario. We're going to be finished in a minute. Zame says, Tamron should make you an ambassador for... you sold me the 28-75. I recently bought the 70-200G and the 16-35Z. I hope I don't regret it when Tamron launches the new lenses. Look, I'd love Tamron to make me an ambassador because I do love their stuff. It's not going to happen, though. I don't think anyone would like to make me an ambassador because I tell the truth too much. That's one of the issues, I suppose, that people may have with me. I'm always honest with you guys. So... just the way it is. What else have we got? Chris said, I'm dreaming of a Tamron 70-200 for E-mount. My longest lens right now is the 85. Yeah, they will bring it out, Chris, I'm sure. Delta Dave said, newbie photographers will buy the camera that their favourite YouTuber uses. And that can be true too, Dave. They are very influenced now by what is on YouTube, and that's a good point. Triple says 49 market share for Canon in 2018, Nikon 25%, and 13% Sony. And that's exactly what I was saying. Kieran, we need a Ricci telephoto for a decent price that doesn't need to be adapted for wildlife. Can't afford the 100 to 400. They will come, Kieran. We just have to wait. Eventually, all the adaptive lenses will come. Chiku says, Canon's main advantage is having many excellent lenses that are below 400. Yep, they do have some excellent cheap lenses. Footage, I get a lot of focus, breathing and hunting on my subjects in low light with my A7III and my Zeiss 755. Wow, I don't get that. Mainly when there is a light source behind them in a fairly lit situation. Interesting. I don't seem to get that. I love that lens. AZ Ghost said, I think the 7D Mark II paired with a 24 1.4 is a good pair. Michael said, Casper, laugh out loud. I'm not sure what that was about. You should invite them for a coffee. Everyone's welcome to come here for a coffee. Dreaming for 200 to 600G for a long time. Need it for wildlife. Expat Pete said, why do you think Ken Wheeler hates Sony so much? I don't think he does. I think it's all a game with Ken. I really do believe he doesn't hate it, and I think he does it to keep his channel happy because they all are so jealous of Sony. I reckon that's probably the reason. I think if you found and you probably spoke to him outside of all of that stuff, I don't think he'd hate it at all. I think it's all that he just loves pushing Fuji. But I think it's all an act. Kieran says, we need a Ricci telephoto for a decent price that doesn't need to be adapted for wildlife. Kieran says, we need a telephoto for a decent price as well. Michael said, Sony is going to make you a mascot, David. I don't think so, Michael. I don't think that's going to happen, mate. I do not think that Sony would ever use me as anything due to the fact of how I am. You know I like having fun. They may not even like me doing this with you guys. I have to say to you that there's an advantage about being independent like I am. I can say whatever I like. And that's one great advantage about me being like I am and being with you guys. Michael says, I'm in a cold, dark basement right now. And Ken said, Fuji. Where is Ken? I love it. Here he is. I love it. That's about all, guys. Now, just a quick plug for Aaron and myself. Wednesdays, we do the other show, which is Behind the Photo Show. I did post it the other day. Please, if you can, watch that show. It's really a lot of fun, and we're talking more about news behind the scenes sort of news. We show some work. We also discuss videography, a lot of other stuff. I have, remember, if you do want to support me, I have got PayPal underneath. And there's also Patreon if you want to go that way. If you hate Patreon, you can pay directly through my website. I have just put up another wedding video on my Patreon site that was talking about me shooting a wedding ceremony. And I had all behind the scenes from drones, me shooting and explaining the shots that I captured and also where Kerry was standing and the shots she was getting. That's just been put on Patreon. So I am now starting to put live videos and extra videos on Patreon for people on there as well. So I'd love to see you join us on there as well. Apart from that, guys, I hope you've really enjoyed the show. Please give me a thumbs up because that does make a big difference. Remember, I'm not sponsored by anyone. I sound like Ken, but I'm not. I'm not sponsored by anyone. Sony certainly aren't supporting me. They added a stack of Australian YouTubers the other day. I wasn't one of them. So I'm not sponsored by anyone, and I'd love you. Well, give me something back just by giving me a thumbs up because it certainly makes a difference to my show. I will have a couple more videos of Kiara coming up. I've got another studio shoot of her that I'm going to post. I might try and do that. I've got a wedding tomorrow, so I can't do it tomorrow. I might try and get that up, say, Monday. And then obviously next week I'm photographing Kiara and also videoing Kiara in Melbourne. If anyone would like to tag along and just see what we're doing, just contact me and I'll let you know what we're going to do when I work out where we're going to go. And you're welcome to follow along. Remember, I always like to give you guys something back. And that would be fantastic. Next year or even late this year, I'm not sure. I do want to plan to go overseas and meet a lot of you guys. So I'd love to go to the US and also Europe. So I'm dying to do something like that and try and organise a shoot with you all. There won't be costs involved. It'll all just be meeting up because I'd love to just give something back to all of you guys. Because remember about me, it's all about this mateship that we have. And so that's really, really important to me. And I do really, I know I sound like a big slobber, it's because I've had two. It really means a lot to me that you support me, guys. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great weekend. Like I said, I don't think I'll be posting anything tomorrow because I'm at a wedding. Apart from that, have a great weekend, everyone. Bye for now. Leave all your questions down below. See ya.